Hello, 3Cs. In the last few lessons, we've talked about how to represent data that we already have, but sometimes we don't have data and we need to be able to collect it. So the next couple of lessons are going to talk about how we collect data. I'm sure you guys have all taken some sort of survey at some point. We're going to talk about if you had to conduct your own survey, how that would look. And to do that, we have a method that's called sampling. When statistics are reported in the media, they almost always come from a study of a small sample of the larger population. Occasionally, the whole population needs to be surveyed. When this is necessary, we call it census. So a sample is a small group from a larger population. So let's say if we're looking at, let's say we're taking the population of MPSS, and we don't have the time to survey everyone. Maybe we pick a group of 50 people, so that would be a sample, a smaller group that's representative of the whole population. And a census would be taking a survey of the entire population. So if we decided we want to poll every single student, then it would be a census versus a sample. A sample is a smaller group. A census is the whole population. So when a statistic tells you that 19.9% of Canadians over the age of 12 smoke, do you think they asked every single Canadian this question? Probably not, because that would take way too much time, and usually on something like the national census, they don't ask about things like smoking. So to get statistics like this, a sample is taken, and then the result of the sample is generalized to the population as a whole. So they're going to pick random people out of the population just to get a good sense of what the population of Canada is looking like. So normally the next section of this lesson, I would have you guys fill in groups from your textbook, but since we don't have those resources here, I'll have you guys copy it in and I'll explain it. You may want to keep your mouse on the pause button so that way you can pause it to write stuff in, or you can view the PDF of this note that's on Brightspace. Either way, just make sure that you get this stuff copied in and you understand these definitions because they can be a little bit tricky. The first one that we're going to talk about is called a simple random sample. And all we're doing is we're picking a sample that's chosen randomly from the entire population. So let's say something like if we wanted to pull our class, we could put all the names in a hat and we could pick out 5 names, and those people we could poll to give us an idea. And the idea behind that is that if we pick people at random, they should give us a good cross-section of our population. Not always, but most of the time, they're going to give us a good approximation of what our class is looking like as a whole. The second one is called a stratified sample. And in this one, the population is grouped by a characteristic and a few people are chosen from each group. So we're going to break down the population, let's say McKinnon Park Secondary School, by some characteristic. We could split them up by their grade, and then we could choose some people from each grade. So let's say we could pick 40 grade 9s, 40 grade 10s, 40 grade 11s, 40 grade 12s, and then we could survey each of them, and that might give us a good representation of the population, which is McKinnon Park Secondary School students. The next one is called the cluster sample. And for this one, what we do is we divide the population into groups that represent the whole, and then choose some groups to talk to. This one can get a little confusing, but a good example would be, let's say we take the whole population of McKinnon Park Secondary School, and we split up into groups of 8, 2 from each grade. So that way, each little group is a good overall representation of the student body. And then we're going to pick out 5 of those groups. And a group as big as McKinnon Park, we're probably going to have maybe like 80 to 100 groups. If we pick out 5 groups to survey, it should give us an okay representation of the overall population. It doesn't take too long to sample everyone. Next, we have systematic sampling. In this one, we take the population, we put them in order, and then we choose every nth person. So basically, we could choose every 3rd person or every 5th person or every 8th person, depending on how many people we want to have. So the way that we choose n, we're going to use this formula that's off to the side here. N is equal to the population divided by the sample size. So let's say if we had McKinnon Park is 700 people, let's say. If we wanted a group of 50 people, we divide 700 by 50. I think that's 14. So we pick every 14th person. So in our example, in a class of 30, let's say it's our class, we want a sample size of 6. So we're going to take that 30 people and we're going to divide by 6. And then we get 5. So it means that we're going to survey every 5th person on my attendance list. We're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to survey the 5th person, 6, 7, 8, and 10, the 15th, the 20th, the 25th, and the 30th person on my list, and they're going to be my random my systematic sample. The next one is called convenience sampling, and this one, basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. You talk to the people who are the easiest to access, the most convenient. So, example would be serving people at the closest street corner and just talking to random passersby. Or let's say going to your local shopping mall or your local grocery store, asking people questions. So that'd be an example of convenience sampling, just doing something simple that gets a good cross-section of the population and hopefully fairly random and a good representation. The next one's called judgment sampling. So what that is you use your judgment to choose a sample. So just kind of thinking, using your own critical thinking skills, you're going to pick people that are going to give you good results. So let's say if you want to ask us questions about art, you're not going to talk to people who don't know much about art. You're going to pick people specifically. So you can choose people you know that like art to answer questions about art. And that way you get a good representation. And then we have voluntary sampling, which is our last one. And all we're doing here is just asking for volunteers. So let's say you could poll the class and just say, please, if you're interested, please hand in your survey and hand everybody a survey. Or you could make a survey using Google Forms and you could post it to your Facebook page or just ask your friends to complete it. And whoever decides they want to can complete it. So those are the types of sampling methods. And depending on the situation, you can pick whichever one makes the most sense for your survey. If a sample does not represent the population as a whole, it is said to be biased. You hopefully have heard that term before. It means it's misleading or unfair or not representative. So you should try to avoid bias at all possible costs. Where is the bias in the following situations? How do you think this bias would affect your results? So let's read through these situations and we're going to determine what the bias is here. So the first situation, we want to know how many people in the school are smokers. So we take a survey of the smokers pits. So obviously you're hopefully realizing that if we're just looking at people in the smokers pit, they're all smokers. So if you're only asking the smokers, you're going to conclude that 100% of people smoke. So that's really not accurate. So there's obviously some bias in that. And the bias is that you're going to get everybody in your survey who is a smoker. All right, so for scenario 2, it's asking to survey how people use technology. You randomly pick a sample from the phone book. So in that one, hopefully you're going to notice that the phone book, there's no cell phone numbers. It's all landlines. So when that happens, you're going to reach most of the people who use tech less than others. Pretty much rules out a lot of people who don't have a cell phone, who have a cell phone and just have their landline. And you're going to miss a lot of tech users. So it's going to give you a misrepresentation of the overall population. It's going to give you a lot of people who are not very tech savvy and maybe miss out on some of the people who know a bit more about technology. There are some people in the phone book who have cell phones and who are very tech savvy, but there are also a lot of people who don't, and it's going to skew your results a little bit. So third scenario, it's asking to find out how many students intend to go to university from MPSS. We could ask the 3C class. So you're probably thinking right now, number one, some of you may know where you want to go for university, for college or university, or wherever you're going after high school. But a lot of you don't just yet. You haven't decided. So that's one problem, is that many grade 11s are still undecided. So it's not going to tell us overall what's going on. There are a lot of grade 12s who are already deciding where they're going, or who already have acceptances and things. And it's grade 9s and grade 10s who have no clue still. And second problem with that is that if we're looking just at our 3C class, it's the college stream. So there's a lot of people who are going to college. Might be some people that are going to university, some people that are going to apprenticeships or the workplace. But realistically, we have a large group of people that are planning on going to college, so it's going to throw up our results. It doesn't represent the whole population of McKinnon Park Secondary School. If we ask the whole grade 11 class, it might give us a better representation. But if we're just asking your college class, it's giving us a bit of skewed results. So it's not going to give us a lot of accuracy. So hopefully that helps things to make a little bit more sense. So make sure you understand those sampling methods. Make sure you understand bias and you can identify it. Try the questions; they'll help you to get a bit more practice with that. And that's about it. We have one more lesson, and then that is it for our lessons. So for this year.